everybody, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Gerard Bissett, author of The Ultimate Survival Guide for College Success and forthcoming book, How to Become the Most Successful Millennial in Your Organization. For more information, please see the links in the description, and as always, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Today's guest is Jack Black. Jack has worked with hundreds of highly successful individuals and companies, training them on how they can have a better mindset towards work and their life. Ain't that right, Jack?
Yes, yeah. I've been doing this now for about 27 years all around the world, so I'm very, very fortunate, and I love what I do, and it's been amazing. I've probably talked to over 500,000 people since I started, so I'm very confident in what I do because, as I say, it works, so people follow what I suggest. They tend to get amazing results in what they're doing, so it's a real pleasure being able to speak to you and ultimately, obviously, your listeners.
Oh no, Jack, it's our pleasure to have you here on the show. So really, just to give the listeners a more of a broader insight, who really is Jack Black and what is Jack Black all about?
Well, Gerard, I got into this stuff nearly 30 years ago when, in the space of a fortnight, 3 people literally dropped down dead on me. I was a fairly ambitious social worker working with young people at risk in Glasgow at the time. One of them was ultimately the boss of the department I worked in, who was, at that time, it was the biggest authority in the whole of Europe, so, hundreds of thousands of staff. An amazing character. He dropped in dead from a heart attack. He had interviewed me for a job a few days before. He was a really inspirational character. He was 39 years of age when he dropped down dead in his office. It really blew me away. Within a few days, I heard of another guy who had a profound effect on my career, had died suddenly with a brain tumour. And then my wife's mother died from a stroke. And none of them reached their 40th birthday, which back then in Glasgow, and even to this day in Glasgow where I come from, is fairly normal. People are aware of people dying prematurely there. Heart disease, cancer, strokes, it's a big thing. It's not necessarily the food, by the way, because these people were all professional people. They were not overweight. They had a nice lifestyle, but they were very, very stressed. And way back 30 years ago in Glasgow, people didn't talk about stress. It was a macho culture. It's a long story, but I then decided to leave my job because I wanted to be my boss who had died. I started a little business. Before I knew what I was still doing my job as I was working my notice kind of thing and building the business. And I collapsed, and I was 29 years of age. I collapsed in hairdressers. And that collapsing, the realisation that I was getting maybe my first, maybe my last warning, caused me to seriously look at stress. There was nothing much about it back then. There was just the odd book. It wasn't being recognised. And when I went searching for how to manage my stress, I found so much more. In that relaxed, stress-free state that we can create, our minds are open to all sorts of, to use words I like to use, programming and control in such a way that we can start to think thoughts that are supportive towards achieving the goals we want to have in our life. And to cut a long story short, I created a full program based on the left and right brain hemisphere type research. It was big at the same time. It was basically saying that if people could use both their brains to become geniuses. I got a breakthrough with an idea. I started selling that idea, and all these years later, it's fed me and families and all this stuff. Ever since, I've had an amazing life with it, and I'm still sharing those ideas with people all around the world. It's just been amazing.
And so, with the people you've worked with over the last 30-odd years, what's really been some of the challenges that these people have faced, and how have you helped them overcome them?
I think the first thing is, I've been doing this for 27 years, but nevertheless, what I found is that most people who hear me will hear me in an audience, maybe in a training program that I'm doing for the company for a few days, or they come to one of our events, or I'm speaking at a conference like the Pendulum Summit in Ireland, where you probably heard me. But I also coach individuals, and even I've got a big audience. The biggest audience is 10,000, but sometimes I get 400 in front of me, or 20, it doesn't matter. People, I really encourage people to come and speak to me at breaks. I don't disappear to dressing rooms. I make myself available, and so that way I get in touch with the audience. So I'm pretty certain that most people who come along to these things realise, and your listeners realise, actually, behind what's going on inside my kind of performance at the moment, people realise they can achieve much more. There's something they know inside themselves that can do more, that they can attract more experiences into life that would be positive and vibrant. They can make themselves, if they wanted to, more wealthy. They could have more fun. All these things, they know somehow or other that it's clearly there for them. They know there's something inside them that can change, but it's kind of out of reach. They don't quite know how to get it. And I suppose what I'm all about is helping them find out how to actually get there and achieve that. And so I'm very much, although I'm very often labelled as the motivational speaker at these conferences, my main theme is on providing tools and techniques, so that all these years later I meet people, very successful people who did something with me 20 years ago, and say, I still use those techniques you taught me. And I'm really proud of that, because the tools and techniques are really, really critical. So I find that people who come along know there is more to them, but they're not quite reaching it. And what I'm doing is providing them with tools to make sure they do.
So let's say, for an example, I'm a 27-year-old person.
Yep.
I'm working in an organisation, and I really feel like my career is going nowhere. I feel like that,
Yep.
I have all the skills and I am talented, but I just, I'm not really passionate about my job, and I just feel like I could be offering more and I could be achieving more. Where do I start?
Yep. I think the first thing is to admit that to yourself, and that's the main thing. There are 4 characteristics for me that stand out with extraordinary men and women, and 27 is a wonderful age to really begin to grasp this and start to decide that you're going to make a difference. There's lots of things you can do, but the starting point would be, first of all, just recognise that people who do succeed in life, who massively succeed in life, are managing stress, what I've talked about already. They've got a means of doing that. The second thing, because building businesses, building careers, building success is very, very stressful. But the men and women who've always inspired us seem to somehow or other do it without being stressed. But they either have a default process or they've developed some way of managing that. So managing stress is critical. Second one is you've just got to become positive. You've got to make sure that you're aware that actually you're thinking. The quality of your thinking, I want to come to this in a big way with this opportunity speaking to you, Gerard, and for your listeners. The quality of your conversation with yourself is really, really critical. Way back at the turn of the previous century, Henry Ford famously said, and he gave us the Ford Motor Company and was the first ever manufacturer of motor vehicles in a production line. Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're absolutely right. And he was way before his time in understanding the power of thought and mindset. So that if you're 27, you've got to figure out, okay, how do I actually step back instead of the kind of noise of my thinking, actually step back and observe your thinking. Begin to see, am I thinking positively? Am I thinking negatively? Do I start thinking about things going wrong? Do I see things going wrong in the mind's eye? Do I run scenarios of failing? Or am I running scenarios in my mind of succeeding? Do I get up in the morning thinking immediately what I'm going to do to achieve today? How today's going to be a success? Or do I think about how it's going to go wrong? You really got to sort of strip back your thinking and understand whether you're more negative or more positive. It's very, very important, because if you've got the potential to be negative, you've got to start working to make sure you shift to a positive mindset. That positive mental attitude is absolutely critical. It's fundamental. The third thing is that men and women who really succeed, from my point of view, are futurists. They have vision in their head of succeeding in things in the future. Now, whether that's something that's going to happen in the next half hour, like an interview for a job that goes really well, or a negotiation in a deal for your company, or a meeting with your staff where you speak up and you're well heard, it doesn't matter whether it's something 30 minutes away, or something 30 years away, or something 10 years away, or 4 months away. The men and women who've always inspired us are very, very clear about how they see the future. They're very clear about it, even although at the beginning they have no idea how they're going to get there. They just know that they will, and they're passionately committed to whatever that is. And that's really, really could be in the future. So I want to talk a wee bit more about that if I can with you in detail, because I think that's where you guys can make a huge difference to their lives. And the fourth thing is to do with this left and right brain stuff, how they're using their brain. Are they more left brain, more right brain? The left brain's the logic, the reasoning, the analysis, the reading and writing, the sort of spreadsheet world. the world of the accountant, the analyst, and so on. The right brain is the creative, intuitive, imaginative side of the brain of the artist, the musician, and so on. But the men and women who have really inspired us have always had an ability in their brain, in their mind, to see futures that inspire them beyond what their left logical brain thinks is possible. And this is really, really critical areas. So to maybe answer it in a very simple way, the people who succeed in life, the 27-year-old who's at the crossroads or thinks they are, or feels they've got to make a move, the men and women who succeed do so because of the quality of the vision they have in their mind at any given moment about something happening in the future, as I've said already, whether it's immediate or a bit longer off. And in relation to that, the type of inner conversations they have with themselves about that. Do they think they can, or do they think they can't, to go back to Ford? And more importantly, what kind of people are they gathering around them to have conversations with too? What are the quality of those conversations? Are those conversations positive, upbeat, reinforcing the idea of success, or are they fearful, negative, expecting things to go wrong? It's so simple, it's frightening, Gerard, but that's where it is.
So what about people who can actually identify with using both parts of their brain?
Yep.
And what would you really say about that?
People who are able to use both sides of the brain.
Yeah. You know, you might have someone
who's... First of all, they're rare, and those are usually the very successful people in the world. You see, the reason why they're rare is our education system majors on all the left brain subjects. It doesn't for the first few months and the first few years of education, and maybe in an enlightened school, wouldn't do that. In our countries, Ireland and Scotland, where I was brought up, in England where I live now, and for that matter, everywhere in the world I've been. What happens is, in those early phases of education, we do find the importance of the structure of language, how to read and write, how to spell, how to add and subtract, and all the left brain type stuff. But we also have the creativity side, because there's space for it then. There's art, maybe music, maybe even drama, self-expression. And then as the school moves on, and the pressure of having a left logical brain type education starts to bear down on us, we find more and more time is spent on mathematics. It was originally arithmetic, now becomes mathematics, physics, chemistry, structure of English, history, geography, and so on and so forth, all logical left brain dominated subjects. And we also find that most parents would want their child to become a professional. If they're of the middle class type family, they're looking for doctors, lawyers, they're looking for accountants, all the left brain stuff. The right brain stuff, the musician, the artist, get yourself a real job kind of thing. And of course, don't even think about becoming an entrepreneur. So this is the major issue. So the people who are using both brains are very rare. We can all use it. We've got both brains, but it's just that our education systems has focused on one side only.
I suppose I can identify with that a lot myself, because I've been told on several occasions, "Oh, why don't you get yourself a real job?"
Yeah, exactly.
So I suppose, I really want to explore, where does mindset and your attitude come into the whole situation? Because, I remember a story of these two salesmen, and they went to Africa.
Yeah.
And they wanted to sell some shoes. And one salesman rings his boss and he says, "Hey boss, I'm coming home. There's no opportunity here. Nobody's wearing any shoes." And the other sales guy calls his boss and says, "Hey boss, I'm staying. There's so much opportunity here because nobody wears any shoes."
Exactly.
So how can we develop that kind of attitude and that kind of mindset that will really uplift our careers, our entrepreneurial businesses, whatever it may be?
Indeed, if you're listening to this and it's the first time you've considered this type of idea, this type of conversation, then the starting point is to listen to more of these kind of conversations, to possibly go back and listen to more of your podcasts, to read material that's going to support you, biographies of successful people. Be very careful what you're watching. For example, don't watch the news. It's never positive. It's just a waste of time. The news will happen anyway. If something's going to really affect you, you'll know about it anyway. So there's no point in watching what's helping what's affecting someone else in the world.
Do you mean the fake news?
Totally negatively on the media. That's an absolute waste of time. So the first thing is to do is to surround yourself with positive, dynamic type of information and engage with it as often as you can. Don't waste your time with anything that's negative. If you can, join organisations or get involved with groups that are positive, that are doing things that are positive. If you're a young man or woman, find your way into societies if they're around in your area or in your town or your city where people are focused on doing things, being actively involved in finding solutions for things, whether it's charitable or not. Get engaged with people that do things and succeed. Stay away from the negative culture that's prevalent. Don't read newspapers. Don't watch the news. Just stay away from all that nonsense and stay focused on building what it is you want to build. And the great thing is, once you start to work with your subconscious this way, where your subconscious is observing you all the time, and says, wait a minute, you've changed. You're no longer engaged in all that negative nonsense. You're actively seeking to do something different with your life. And once you prove it with your activity and your actions and the kind of conversations you have, do you know what your subconscious does? Your subconscious, when it feels it's right, reveals to you what it is you can do, what it is you should do to go and change your life. It won't give it to you right away, though, especially if you're a beginner listening to this. Your subconscious won't reveal that to you. And the reason it won't reveal it to you in the early stages is because you would squander it. Because you're not demonstrating yet you've got the right behavioural patterns, the right attitudes, and the stick-with-it ability, etc., etc. That comes from demonstrating to your subconscious that you are changing in what you're reading, the conversations you're having, both of yourself and with other people, the stuff that you're putting in. It's all about inputs and outputs. Put the right food in, put the right conversations in, put the right material in, and you'll change your mindset and you'll change your attitudes.
So what about someone who actually really feels that they procrastinate all the time and they don't feel like they have any motivation?
Well, procrastinators tend to be, from my experience, I work with a lot of them, procrastinators tend to be perfectionists. Mm-hmm. Perfectionists are people who kind of this thing about they won't do something unless they know for a fact it's going to work. They won't do something unless they know for a fact they're going to succeed. And they sit about waiting till something happens. This is why my previous statement is so important. A lot of people are sitting waiting for something special to show up that's going to give them the secret, the way forward, the thing to do to succeed in their life. It's never going to work like that because your subconscious knows who you're like, knows who you are. Your subconscious knows you're a procrastinator. It knows you're lazy. It knows you won't act. So it's never going to reveal to you what it is you can do to be massively successful with your life. It'll only do that when it sees activity, when it sees you off your backside, and when you're and doing things. And this is a great thing about how it works. For a procrastinator who starts doing something, even if it ends up being the wrong thing to do, because you've snapped the chains of inertia and you're building momentum in terms of activity, moving towards something, when your subconscious sees that and knows that you are moving towards something in the future that's inspiring you, it will then reveal what you should do, and you'll find it's effortless to move to a new direction, a new path, and continue on your merry way. It's actually all very simple, Gerard. It's just about how you see the future, the conversations you're having with yourself, and what you're doing about that.
Absolutely, and when you put it like that, it sounds very simple, okay, all right?
It is, Gerard. It's simple. It's so frightening.
So just to finish up, Jack, and our final question here today is, what would be 5 things or 5 pieces of advice that you could give the young people or whoever this may be listening to it that maybe you would do differently or maybe you recommend we do differently moving forward into the future?
I think the great thing about...
other than stop watching the fake news.
Yeah, of course. The fake news especially. I mean, the thing is that when you're young, time seems like something that's spread out there in the future. If you're in your 20s, 50s, feel like a million years away. These things, time disappears very, very, very quickly. And so you've got to make sure you're using your time wisely. Really, really sit down and maybe get a checklist or a fresh piece of paper and say, okay, what kind of stuff am I reading? what am I going to discard from what I'm reading? What am I now going to read? And, the times go by, and if all you do is spend your time looking at a blooming, with respect to them, a smartphone, your head down, looking at Twitter and Facebook, and I use these things too. I've got, people want to follow me in these things, and that's fine. But the truth is that if you spend your life looking at all that stuff and engaged in a screen, you're not living your life. You're not building stuff. What many people do is they observe other people being successful. They watch them on TV. They watch actors in TV series. All they're watching is someone being successful. They don't realise I'm wasting my time watching them. I should be doing something myself. Watch what you're reading. Watch what you're watching. Watch make sure you're having the right kind of conversations. I've said that already. Really begin to think about the future. And here's really what I wanted to really mention here is when we look at the future, because of this left logical brain I've talked about already and why it's so powerful in their mindsets, is as soon as someone thinks about something wonderful, something like to have, do, or be, there's a big part of the brain starts coming in asking, but how are you going to do that? What proof have you got that you can achieve this? And these type of conversations start to take place in your mind. And then what happens is because the person has got something they want to have, do, or be, and they can't figure out how they're going to get there, they actually give in. They stop chasing that goal. But here is something they really, really have to hear, if you can come with me here. What they really have to hear is that none of the men or women that inspired us throughout history knew in the beginning how they were going to do what it was they ended up doing. They just knew that they really, really wanted to. In fact, this how question is destructive. The best question to ask yourself when you think of something you would like to have, do, or be, is ask an amazing question, and the question is why. When you ask why questions about your future, you start to build clarity about why you want it, and that creates in your mindset the benefits that are going to come to you as a result of you achieving this. And those benefits will drive you to do whatever you have to do to succeed. If you ask how too early in the beginning, you won't have an answer to it. And because the left logical brain is so powerful with that how question, you'll then convince yourself to give in. Whereas the why starts to work on your right brain, and you start to think about the whys, you think about the benefits, and you start to fantasize a wee bit of all the wonderful things you can do or will do as a result of being successful, whatever it is you want to do. That then drives different kind of internal communication, internal dialogue. That drives different kind of conversations and ultimately different behaviours, and then you go on to succeed. So it's really all about surrendering this left brain dominance, become a bit more right brain, begin to fantasize what you'd like to have, do, or be, and really deciding to do something about it. And the amazing thing about your mind is that once you have the intention, Gerard, the intention to succeed, and you demonstrate that you're really committed to it by constantly reviewing the future you've got in your mind, in your mind's eye, monitoring and shaping the conversations you're having with yourself, feeding the stuff in that's going to help you, then it's almost like magic. Something happens. It's like you've primed the pump and it's ready to flow, and suddenly things happen, and always to your advantage. And it feels like magic. You attract the right people at the right time, the right ideas come at the right time, you find yourself pushing out of your comfort zone, experimenting and succeeding at things you've never done before, and so on and so forth. It's just about momentum created by snapping chains of inertia, because you've found a vision of the future that inspires you and you're committed to it.
Well, everybody, that has been Jack Black on another episode of the Gerard Bissett podcast. Thanks everybody for listening, and please head on over to Jack's Facebook page or Twitter and all his social media channels and follow him. I know he said don't consume too much time on your smartphone, but Jack is worth a follow because he's going to be sharing some engaging content on there. Thanks,
Gerard,
everybody.
Guys, if they were interested, just go to www.mindstore.com. That's my website, mindstore.com.
I'll put the link in the description.
Good man. And you can get me at Jack MindStore on Facebook, or at Jack_Black. It's Jack_MindStore, sorry.
Perfect.
But they'll get me there anyway from that mindstore.com.
Perfect. Thanks everybody for listening.